Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast.
And I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
Welcome to a new Dexter Original Sin discussion. We had a lot of fun a couple of episodes ago talking about this strange individual who shows up in episode 2 to ask Dexter if this seat is taken at the restaurant.
Yeah, and my theory has been tinfoil hats on nice and early,
Mm-hmm.
that person is Brian Moser. I mean, his brother did say in the original series that he had been watching him a very long time. So
Yes.
it's possible at this age that he is circling Dexter as one of the possibilities of people who it could be. He could be searching out a couple people. He could be playing the really long game. But the big question we're going to ask today is, could Brian Moser, if this is him, be behind the person who killed the judge's son? Is it actually him? And is this a way to try to get to Dexter, to try to get Dexter's attention, and, sort of the start of Brian's whole journey?
I think a very important thing we have to remember throughout this season, not just this past episode, this coming episode, is that everything that Clyde Phillips, executive producer, is doing is for a reason. This is somebody who is a Dexter guru who may not have run every single season of the original, but he ran a lot of the ones that people really, really like. I think that there is a deliberateness behind this Jimmy Powell case that we are seeing on the show right now. It is not a coincidence that dude at that restaurant looked a lot like Brian Moser.
But before we get into that, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We are here every week talking about Dexter. We are going to be here also talking about Dexter Resurrection when that comes later on in 2025. We've got Yellow Jackets coming up here at the channel. We have Severance coming up not too long from now. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps Matt and I here at the channel, and it makes it that you don't miss any of our videos. So thank you so much.
We really appreciate that. And we'd also appreciate it if you join our Patreon. We've got a link in the description below. We have some really exciting exclusive video content planned there for January, including The Pit on Max, this 15-episode medical drama told in real time, major 24 vibes going on just with that premise alone. And then a mystery thriller titled Prime Target that is going to be on Apple TV Plus. That is right in the sort of genre that we love to do. So thank you so much to all of you out there who are supporting us on Patreon. That is a great way to help us continue to make these videos we love to do so much.
Okay, so is the person that killed Jimmy Brian Moser?
No? Question mark?
Okay, I think possibly.
Okay.
So here's the evidence. We all have our detective hats on at this point. Okay, the person who killed Jimmy put him out on a big display for a reason. And there's no demands, no ransom, finger cut off. It's not Brian Moser, the ice truck killer's normal MO, but we have to remember he's much younger at this point. So this might be at the beginning when he's kind of figuring things out. With no demands and no ransom, and he's out on display, and it is a kid. It all feels like it's just a message. And what is that message? It could be trying to draw at Dexter and make him feel something, which it did. He saw the kid being carried. It was all the sort of the same feelings that he went through when he was carried out and everything was happening to him. That when it is a kid, it hits really different. We went over that a little bit in our review as well, which we'll link for you below to be able to check out if you haven't. But outside of no demands, no ransom, and the finger cut off is the thing that I was the most connected to what the ice truck killer ends up being. Because when we end up meeting him later on, he is, attacking people that are on the streets, that are NHI, as they're calling them in this precinct, which is so gross, but that's why Maria's in, but we're going to get into that as well. But he was, doing a dismemberment on those bodies. And now here we have a finger cut off. For why? For what reason? For no reason. But this might be the reason, which is that it's the very beginning of his path to oh, now I'm doing whole bodies. I started with just a finger. Okay, that worked out well for me. I'm feeling good about that. Now we're going to do an arm. Now we're going to do 2 legs. Now we're doing all of it.
Here is where I think you're really cooking with gas with this theory, is just that they're doing everything on this show for a reason. And, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's a sentiment of, okay, wouldn't it be fun if you were Clyde Phillips and you get everybody to watch Dexter Original Sin with just this idea that you're watching Dexter's origin story, when in reality, you're actually watching Brian's origin story. And it is an excellent bit of switcheroo that's going on here. And I do think everything you're saying is plausible, that, okay, this is something that could be happening, and maybe this entire case is the one that got away.
Well, here's the other thing too, is that with the whole NHI, no human involved.
Yeah.
And this is the group of people that Brian later in life is putting the focus on, of the people that he is killing. It can't be a coincidence then that you've got Maria coming in to deal with exactly this, that she has put a big focus on the department, treating people like no human involved, when that is clearly not the case, that for the department, it's not as important, where that is people that Brian was focusing on later on in the Dexter series. It all just feels very much like what you said. Yeah, we're seeing a bit of a Dexter origin story, but we might also be seeing a bit of a Brian Moser origin story, which I know that a lot of people were interested in, because that first season of Dexter with Brian, it was like, oh man, it would have been nice to know even more about him.
And we know already that Dexter as a franchise, they are interested in telling these origin stories for some of their big bads. Like, they have a Trinity Killer prequel that's in development right now.
Go.
With, John Lithgow supposedly narrating over there. So it's certainly in the realm of possibility that we're seeing this. But here's what things become a little bit more interesting to me on all of this. And this is why I don't necessarily think that Brian himself has to be the killer in this instance for this to still be a Brian Moser origin story. I watched Gotham many, many years ago, a show that started off not great, but got a lot better as it went along. But anyway, one of the things that I saw in Gotham that they did that was pretty interesting is they had this character of Jerome, which I think in part was born out of DC, probably not wanting them to say the Joker. But what ended up happening that was so interesting is they kind of framed Jerome in the end as this character who became an inspiration for a lot of other villains, including presumably the real Joker at some point down the road. And that's kind of what I'm seeing this Jimmy Powell case as right now, where I don't necessarily think that this is Brian himself that's committing these acts, but if he is, kind of like you've said, following Dexter around, kind of keeping tabs as to what's going on, he's probably going to be aware of, okay, Dexter's job. Okay, here are some of the prominent cases that are going on. And I think what a lot of us know from years of watching various crime-related shows and documentaries and all of that is that killers have a tendency to be inspired a lot by other killers, where they don't exactly steal the exact same MO, but they're sort of like, oh, that's interesting, in their weird, twisted minds. And that's where they get with some of their stuff, some of their practices. So I think it's very much plausible that Brian is seeing all of this, that Brian is going to adapt some of this to kind of suit his own purposes. And that, to me, kind of helps to explain why we're seeing all of this in the first place.
Absolutely. I think that because it is going to take a while for Brian to get to where he is the ice truck killer. I mean, we're seeing Dexter at 20. I mean, this is, way in the past, that him either being the person behind this or seeing this happening and being like, oh, that finger being cut off, that's something that might hit something for him in a way that he's like, okay, this is something that I'm interested in. I've seen how this case has affected Dexter. I've seen how, this whole like NHI thing has affected the department and what's been going on. I'm going to start connecting everything now that they're focusing more on this no human involved, and start focusing on this group of people because it's going to get Dexter's attention, because it's going to get Maria's attention.
I think one of the bigger questions I have that's kind of born out of all of this is how much of this is eventually going to be brought to the forefront this season, or how much of it is just going to be constantly in the background. So if Jimmy Pal's real killer here, for example, is just some random person we haven't met yet, or some of the crazy theories that we've talked about, whether it's Clark or Tanya or somebody else is responsible, are we still going to see this Brian character turn up again and sort of have some sort of light bulb moment? Is there going to be a direct nod, or are we just going to be kind of left to thinking about it?
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, we know when Brian actually shows up in
Yes.
the original Dexter series, for those of you who have seen it. I know there's a lot of people out there that this is their first time getting into Dexter, which is, really fun. Is it a great way to be able to start to get his origin story? But if they get deeper, if this is Brian and they reveal that it's Brian, it has to be a situation where Brian gets away. They can't have really too much of that crossover, or at some point then it's going to start to take away from the canon of what happened in the actual original Dexter.
You do not want to upset the canon police. Trust me, I've seen what they do on Reddit.
I don't want to see that either. Like, I'm not on Reddit, but like, that Reddit signal going to go up in the air about this, and I'm going to be there being like, bro, what is happening? Like, it's not all right. Because if, let's say this is Brian and he is brought in on this whole thing, at some point, if Dexter sees him, he's going to have remembered that later in life. And be like, I've seen you before. You were part of this. I just don't think that it would work at all if it's Brian that he gets caught. Because once he gets caught, I mean, this is a judge's son. If he gets caught, he's in jail forever. There is no getting out to be able to be the ice trick killer.
I do think we're going to see Brian again this season. I don't think it was a coincidence. It's not just an Easter egg. I think we are going to see him again. We will get some sort of understanding as to his relationship with these cases that are going on, even if it's just a breadcrumb down the road. Because when Showtime and Paramount came and dumped all this money to Clyde Phillips and Michael C. Hall and said, bring back Dexter, I think they came up with a multi-season plan for all of these different shows, ways they want to tie everything together. It's sort of, and this is a larger discussion for another day, but it's sort of like what I'm thinking right now, that one of these characters who's sort of a potential one and done on Original Sin is going to come back on Resurrection, because they want to link these shows together as much as they can. They want to link Original Sin to the original Dexter as much as they possibly can. And I don't think this is going to be a show or a universe that's ever going to leave everything up to interpretation. It's not going to just be like, that was Brian Moser, maybe? Think for yourself. Was he inspired by all that? That's never been what Dexter does.
No, this is not the end of the Blacklist where you have to go and make up your own ending or anything like that. This is a show that does give answers, which I think is one of the many reasons why this show is as popular as it is. They'll give, whether you like it or not, like that Deb loves Dexter whole storyline, which I did not like. At least they committed to it. And I have a lot of respect for that you're not just leaving things up to interpretation.
No matter where they end up going with all of this, it's a fascinating thing to think about. And I think just big picture, I'm really happy with how many people are getting on board Dexter Original Sin right now. I was very worried everybody was just going to kind of give the stink face after how badly New Blood ended, but everyone seems to be really liking the show. I like that they did this Brian thing, because it just gives us something more to talk about and makes us think that this is just not a ho-hum case involving the kid of a high-level figure, because it's just, that's not as interesting as us being able to sit back and wonder, okay, why are we seeing this? Why does this matter?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be just an actual visual of a retelling of the story that we already know. And I feel like, while there's some of that, there's not all of that. They are giving some other things.
And this does fit the MO of something the producers have said, and we've noted before, there are things we are going to learn about on Original Sin that Dexter is not privy to.
Yeah.
This could be one. Yeah. Okay, that is what we got to say about Brian Moser, but hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our Dexter Original Sin reviews that we've got coming up here. We are also prepping for Yellow Jackets before too long. If you want to support us further, join our Patreon. That link is in the description below. We are doing exclusive video content of The Pit and also Prime Target. Thank you guys so much for your support. We'll see you here next time.